ourselves into such a perfect storm of the least optimal conditions for human beings on this planet to live healthily in the one body that we ever get to live inside, do we not? And by that, what I mean is we've got corporations who have been free to dole out profit-making, high sugar, high chemical foods for decades, with insipid governments refusing to put any sort of limits on them. You've got sports facilities closing left, right and centre. You've got sport no longer prioritised in schools. You've got parents confused about what we can and cannot say no to our children about. That is a big thing. And that we think by making our children happy is what we should all be doing by giving them Haribo if they want it. But also, Monica, we've also created this culture whereby it's not okay to talk about obesity being a problem. And I'm alluding to slightly the body positivity movement, so normalising clinical obesity, to normalise it, not just normalise it, in fact, make it something to aspire to, which I find deeply troubling as the mother of two daughters. And I've spoken to GPs who've said that they've had people in their surgery who are quite clearly their health conditions are derived from their obesity, and yet they feel they cannot say that for fear of upsetting that person. We're strangulating the conversation.
It is. And I think you're absolutely right. And I agree with you, Bev. You know, we need to talk about this. We need to have open, honest conversations. People need to say the word fat. You know, it's in our dictionary. When we look at somebody who's thin, can you imagine how grotesque it would be to have an advert of somebody who displays anorexia, for example, and who's extremely thin on an advertisement? But now we're seeing advertisements where people are morbidly obese being displayed by manufacturers, by fashion designers, and as you say, saying that this is okay. But it's a sad fact in our 21st century, Bev, that fat has become normal. You know, overweight has become normal. You know, and when you're what we call a normal weight, so somebody who has a BMI of say between 18 to 24.9, that's the kind of healthy range, then those people are considered to be skinny, or they get bullied because they're thin, and they're just a normal weight. But a new normal is actually an overweight, which is anybody with a BMI of over 25. Now, the problem is, of course, is that you've got to want to do it yourself. That's the biggest thing, Bev. Parents are really struggling. So we have to educate. I'm absolutely a firm believer that we need to bring this education back into our schools. We need to bring back a skill that says cooking, for example. That was taken from most of our schools, and the private sector have it, of course, but a lot of the grammar schools, all they do is cook pizzas and make cakes. This is not teaching our children about where the food comes from, how it's produced, the importance of those nutritions in our food, and the effect it has on our body. I mean, I've simply changed people's lives just from changing their diet and increasing their water intake. And it's all possible with food. And that's the problem, because most of our food is so processed now.
It really is. And I think what we should say, look, Monica, we're sitting here as two healthy women of healthy weight. Okay. We are, some would say you are lucky. And I've no doubt that genetics, metabolism, upbringing plays a massive role in this. And I want us to make it clear that we know it's not easy, right? We know it's not easy. You know, unhealthy food is blooming delicious. Is it not? That's why we eat so much of it, and we all struggle with that. So if you could give one tip to people, Monica, watching this, who are like, you know what, Bev's banging on about fat people again. She's probably right, but it's really hard to do anything about it. What would you say?
Well, that's it. I'd agree with you. It's so hard. So start looking at your labels. It's the sugar, Bev. You know, we've been banging on about fat is bad for you. It's actually the sugar. Reduce your sugar intake. You know, just for instance, if you've got children, you know, just a small bag of Haribos and the like, you know, they can sometimes contain between 6 to 7, 8 or more teaspoonfuls of sugar. You know, it's the sugar that you need to cut down from your diet. So look for things that are lower in sugar, because those are the things in the long term that are going to help help you. And swap one of those wonderful, cappuccino, caramel lattes that we all like to have as we walk along the high street coffee shops. Swap one of those just simply for a bottle of water, because those are piled full of sugar and calories. And that's the sort of thing that's actually escalating their problem, particularly in the young children, because everybody, loves a latte. But you've just got to, you can have them. I always say to everybody, everything in moderation. But when you start getting out of control and your weight starts spiraling, then that is a time to put food diaries in place. Make a note of what you're eating. Look at your food labels and let go less on your sugar as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Treat yourself to a pair of trainers and walk